all options open, Maddie. I mean, essentially what we're seeing here is U.S. President Donald Trump smacking out at his NATO allies. Essentially, we saw yesterday he was talking pretty tough towards Emmanuel Macron, the French president, for his comments on the brain death of NATO just a couple of weeks ago. A lot of questions about the future of this transatlantic alliance. As you know, the 70th anniversary not really being trumpeted by these leaders. Even the Secretary General, when I spoke to him just a few days ago and asked him about what he was hoping to hear from the president. He said he was hoping to hear from President Trump that the president was pleased by the fact that we have seen several NATO members ponying up when it comes to spending, getting to that 2% target of NATO spending that we've been seeing the president pushing for so long now. But as you say, still some major disagreements on the table, one of which, of course, is not just that S-400 purchase and delivery to Turkey, but also questions about YPG and why it is that the Turkish president has said he's going to veto anything that has to do with security in the Baltics because he wants the NATO alliance to recognize the YPG as terrorists. Listen in to what the French president had to say about that.
Today, we weren't able to get rid of the disagreement, and I believe he has told NATO officials that this has been a point of stalemate in the conclusions. But we cannot be incoherent anymore. And so, we are against all those who conduct terrorist acts. We are anxious about the security of the Turkish territory, but we do not wish to generalize and forget those who fought against Daesh, and we know how to distinguish them from one another.
The French there really pushing back on what Turkey's been up to in Syria. As you know, they've had serious disagreements with the Turks, not just over their actions in Syria of late, but also, of course, dating back to 2015. You have to wonder if this is some kind of form of payback from the Turkish president. You remember back in 2015, we saw Turkey downing a Russian jet that they said was getting too close to their territory. That was a flyover issue. And NATO members, including at that time U.S. President Barack Obama, failing really to back up Turkey in that disagreement. And in subsequent years, we saw continued efforts by the Turks and the Russians actually to get closer and closer together. And really that purchase and delivery of the S-400 system is the culmination of that rapprochement, I would say, between the two countries. So one wonders if this isn't some sort of payback from Turkey's president to NATO leaders. But I have to ask what's happening next. And we did hear as well, not just from President Trump on this topic, but we also heard from NATO's Secretary General. I'd asked him a couple of days ago, as you'll remember, does it feel like an exhausting effort to herd these cats with all of the various disagreements? But listen in to what he had to say specifically about Turkey.
I will not promise that, but what I can say is that we are working on that and that we already have plans in place. What we are discussing is the revision of plans. We are constantly updating and revising plans, but it's not like NATO doesn't have a plan to defend the Baltic countries. We have a plan, and as I said, we have the forces, and we have the presence. So I think that's the strongest expression of our collective defense, our commitment to NATO's collective defense goals.
So again, NATO's Secretary General saying we have disagreements over the S-400 defense system, but we also have serious disagreements over whether or not NATO nations are going to be willing to call the YPG group terrorists. And it seems as if, at least so far, that's pretty unlikely. That, of course, means that President Erdogan of Turkey now has the ability to veto potential defensive measures in the Baltics. So really, it's a domino effect, isn't it? We're not just talking about one issue with regards to what's happening in Turkey's sphere of influence, Russia's sphere of influence in Syria, but also more broadly in the Middle East, in the region. Talks about Syria, talks about China, talks about what's happening next with Russia. So a cornucopia of things to be covering today, and we'll just have to wait and see what U.S. President Donald Trump chooses to focus on when the tweets start later this morning. Matt?
Hey everybody, it's Hadley Gamble from our new CNBC Middle East Bureau in Abu Dhabi. Thanks for stopping by. Now to watch more, you can try one of the videos that just popped up on your screen. And don't forget to subscribe.